there's an opportunity here for you to make an attitude shift, to ascend in not only your identity, but in your attitude around how do I invest to create that.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo.
And I'm Dr. Stephen Franson.
And here's the deal. You're going to pay for it one way or the other. Dr. Stephen, today we're going to have a conversation about value and the end of the day, what it looks like. You're going to pay for something on the front end or the back end, and we're going to learn from the greats. And we know we're speaking to remarkable CEOs. And our vision for you is that you would be a high-performing CEO. Today, we're going to talk about how high-performing CEOs look at their investments, how they invest. So remember, you have the working in your business, working on your business, and working above your business. And today, we're going to spend some time having a conversation about what it looks like to be an investor working above your business.
I love this conversation, Dr. Pete, because we've recently talked about RPE, which is really heady, a very analytical conversation on a related topic. Because it's like today we're going to get on the other side of that coin, and we're going to go a bit more nebulous, more attitudinal, right? So we're going to talk more on the creative side of this, because as a CEO, as a business owner, we're going to wear a certain lens. We're going to have an attitude around how we invest, right, to create an environment and to create a product, and to create a service, right, that people are going to value, right? So I think it's such a mature and healthy perspective for a CEO to take when you look at the investment, to recognize like where you started, you're going to pay for that, right? So it's going to run you, it's going to run you. And here's the takeaway: it's going to run you one way or the other. Okay. So it's going to cost you on the front end, or it's going to cost you on the back end. Right. So, and I want everybody to be thinking about that as an owner, right? So if you choose to invest to create a remarkable experience and a remarkable product delivered in a remarkable space by a remarkable team of people, with a remarkable business model, we're teaching you guys, that's what we taught you with RPE. So the model has to work, right? The money has to work, right? So now we're on the other side of the money has to work. Now it's how you invest that money to create the experience and the product and the value that's the perceived value by your consumer, by your customer. You're either going to do that on the front end or you're going to do it on the back end, right? So it's going to cost you on the front end to create that extraordinary or remarkable experience and product, or it's going to cost you on the back end. Because if you don't make the investment in creating a remarkable experience and a remarkable product, building a remarkable team, if you don't make that investment, the opportunity lost is going to cost you, right? So it becomes very expensive on the backside of it. So, Pete, this is a really interesting perspective. It's very heady, but I think, on the backside of the analytical revenue per employee conversation, I feel it's freeing because now we're getting into the creative mind, into the creative space, to recognize what we want to wow our people, right? So we want to be remarkable, which means we're the talk of the town. We want to give them something that's beyond an expected level of service, right? So it's not just great outcomes. If all we had to do as chiropractors is get better health outcomes for people, none of us would be able to keep up. Yeah. You're right. You wouldn't even be able to get an appointment, right? You'd be overflowing, right? So it's not just about getting the outcomes that, listen to this, people expect, right? I'm going to give you my time, energy, focus, and money. You're going to do what you do as a healthcare provider, and I got great outcomes. I'm happy, but that doesn't necessarily make you remarkable. Okay. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily make you the talk of the town, where you become the buzz of the town, where people are referring to you and talking about you as what an extraordinary place, what an extraordinary environment, what an extraordinary experience, what a remarkable product. And they talk about their experience and outcomes, right? So if you become the talk of the town, your business is going to burst at the seams, right? So this is where you have enormous growth and you see that awesome return on the investment. Yes. And if you don't, that's where the expense lives, is massive opportunity loss because you chose not to make that investment and create that value.
Yeah, Doc Stephen, some really just awesome, just mindsets just that we're setting here today. And I immediately go to some of our remarkable success partners. So in the remarkable practice, we have intentionally organized specific businesses that offer specific products and services that help the doctors that we get to serve and work with to leverage the expertise of someone else and their business to drive an outcome that you want. So just as an example, I have regular meetings with these success partners, as well as you, Dr. Stephen. We meet regularly with them. And actually, many of them you'll meet as part of the podcast as you listen through some of these episodes. We interview them. They're experts, and they share with us how they're delivering value and adding value. And I immediately think about, whenever I'm meeting with them, one of the questions I ask is, how are you adding value specifically as a CEO? If as a CEO, you're considering adding a product or a service underneath your business, the CEO is thinking about, I'm making an investment in this. I'm going to invest money into this, and time and training and all the resources, so that I can gain and get the outcome that I desire. And that's exactly why we have intentionally, in the remarkable practice, have aligned ourselves and partnered with other businesses, because we've recognized that we aren't the business that's going to provide necessarily all those services. So we've recognized what our lane is and what our zone of genius is. And then we recognize what is the zone of genius in the lane of the other. So you make the investment, and we've invested in partnering. They are investing in partnering. We were forming a partnership so that we can provide more value to you if you're a remarkable member, and you have direct access to these people who we vetted on your behalf. And we know, we hope, we trust that they will deliver on that experience that we have brought them in to do and help drive the outcomes. But it's the investment that you're making. And Dr. Stephen, I think about this because in our business, in our industry, and I think we're going to talk about some other industries and examples, but in the chiropractic industry, oftentimes I feel like the whole mom and pop shop, play small, keep it lean, like that mentality has really inhibited us in many ways from really growing, and I believe reaching the masses that we desire to reach. And we can come up with whatever reason why it's been that way, but no more. And we know too much, and we know better now. And we know that, if you've an owner operator mindset, will not embrace this in this conversation today. But the CEO transformation, that identity shift that you go through, that metamorphosis and transformation, and the behavioral shift, this is a behavior that follows an identity that's directly connected back to who you're being as or becoming that remarkable CEO. Dr. Stephen, this is so vital for you as a listener, and for me, for us, in everything that we do. It's gonna be pervasive throughout your entire experience in business. Getting this mindset right will be the thing that changes everything.
Yeah, I want to pause for a second and say, I think our heart in this conversation as, the Remarkable CEO podcast. We're very careful not to project our vision, story, and our definition of success, because Dr. Pete and I have different vision stories for success, as we are, as much as we are alike, separated at birth, brothers from different mothers, right? So we still have a different vision story of exactly what success looks like to you. And as we teach you guys, we'll be careful not to tell you or project upon you what success looks like to you. So just respectfully, if for you it's like, no, I want to be lean and mean and super, that's cool, man. I want you to know that. We just want you to optimize that and have that experience based on your core values. So I just want to say that respectfully and to be congruent, right? So, but for those doctors who do have a bigger vision for where you are today, whatever that is, it's bigger, right? If you have a bigger vision for 24 than you had in 23, if you have a bigger vision for 25 and beyond, then this conversation is for you. Okay. So, and I want to be really specific about that. I want to challenge you, right? Some of you are 3 years in practice. Some of you are 43 years in practice. And I'm going to ask you right now, why haven't you manifested that yet? Okay. And what are the limiting beliefs? What are the stories you've been telling yourself, right? So we just want to free you of those limiting beliefs and recognize that there is a bigger story for you. It's just right in front of you. Okay. So, and I hope that this perspective helps you move forward with confidence into that space, right? So, because at the end of the day, we had the analytical conversation. So you're going to do it with intelligence as well. It's not just going to be blind stumbling with confidence and I'm just going to throw a bunch of money. This is like, at the end of the day, we gave you the constructs to operate under to make sure that the model works. The revenue per employee ratio is one of those important things, right, that you want to take into consideration. The rule of 40 that we've reviewed here, rule of 40, both of those are like the HRV of the wellness business, right? So the HRV of chiropractic business is RPE, revenue per employee, right? We talked about that last time. It's a way for you to keep that business model in check so the money works, right? So this is a conversation of how do you make the money work, right? This is, what are you choosing to invest in? Are you investing in a creative process, or are you investing in problem whack-a-mole? Okay, because I'll contest that you're going to spend the exact same amount of time, energy, focus, and money in your career. The question is you're going to have one of those two experiences. You're going to invest intentionally in your vision story to manifest that, or you're going to invest in playing problem whack-a-mole, right? So one of the, you're going to spend the exact same amount of time, energy, focus, and money, right? So do the math for me. What I'm going to encourage you is to recognize that there's an opportunity here for you to make an attitude shift, to ascend in not only your identity, but in your attitude around how do I invest to create that, right? So this story, or I should say this conversation was inspired by a story I heard. I heard a podcast with Jeff Mastro was being interviewed. Jeff Mastro is a guy, part of a team, Oliver Baggio and Jeff Mastro. They're the founders of Mastro's Steakhouse, right? So everybody probably have heard of Mastro's Steakhouse, some of the best restaurants in the world, right? So they had some of the best restaurants in the world. They've since exited, right? So they sold it for big bucks, right? And they got back in the game. Now they've got the Seasons 44 and Dominic 40. There's a few other awesome restaurants that the same group went back out and started them again, and they're wildly successful again, right? So success leaves clues. I love how Tony Robbins says that, right? So one of the things that they talked about was the fact that at the end of the day, in the absence of value, the only context your customer will have is cost. Mm-hmm. So as long as you're providing massive value and their experience is incredibly valuable and the product is valuable and the team is remarkable, as long as you're providing enormous value, then people aren't focused on the cost. They're focusing on the value of the experience and the product, right? So in the absence of that value, the only reference point they have is the cost. So Dr. Pete, they're going to be focusing on one of the two things, right? So it's never a money issue. It's always a value issue for those docs who might be sitting there being like, oh man, I'm afraid to make the investment to create the practice that I know I'm capable of having, that building the team, investing in the technology, investing in the marketing, creating the physical space that where I can do my best work and I can become that remarkable practice. I'm afraid to do that. You have to recognize that it's all about creating the value, because if you do not deliver on the value, the only thing that they're focusing on is the cost.
So Dr. Stephen, I love that we're going here. I just want to get real practical right away. And so if you're listening to this and you say, hey, we're having a hard time with people, our patients actually valuing their care, let's say that's been a challenge for you, is capturing value. They're going through your process. New patients maybe aren't coming in at the rate you want, or maybe they are, but then they're not converting at the rate they want. Or maybe they are, but they're not retaining at the rate that you want. Wherever there's a lack of, or something is off, whether it's on attraction or conversion or retention or all the above, you have to go back and look at, have we created the value? Have we built enough value? So why would somebody choose to come in the first place? Why would they choose to start? Why would they choose to stay? And we have a tremendous amount of training and resources for you underneath this, but on top of it is value. And so I'll give you an example, Dr. Stephen. So for example, if we host a conference, the teams that will say, we're going to come to an event, we're going to take our team, we're going to train for a couple of days, we're going to make an investment, time, energy, focus, and money to go to an event. We're going to make an investment. And as a result of investing that and getting the value, we see the value in training. We see the value of investing in our people, players. We see the value. And as a result of that, the business always grows on the other side. It grows on the other side. You'd have to show me it not doing that to prove me wrong, because all I know is it always grows. And so we know that this is true. And so if you're listening right now and you said, hey, we're in a little bit of a challenging spot, the question you should ask yourself is, where do we need to invest more to build more value for what we do so that the perception of the customer will actually see it? One of the examples you gave, Masters, right? People will pay more. Okay. So it's not just steak, period. It's not just, oh, we sell steaks. Steak rather. No, we're going to pay more to go to this place and eat the same category of food, protein type, as we could another, but we would be willing to pay more. But it's because the ownership level has a value for what they do. They invest in it, they value it, and therefore the perception and the willingness to participate and invest increases. So the doctors that invest more in the training of their staff, more into building a world-class experience for the patient from soup to nuts, everything. It's like everything's been thought out. We go above and beyond. We're always looking for ways to make it just a little bit better, a little bit more awesome.
Every detail.
Everything matters. You will attract and convert and retain people, and they'll be more happily and more enthusiastically not only investing, but staying and referring as a result of that. So if you're seeing that we're not getting the attraction or the conversion, the retention, we're not getting the referrals, what can you do to increase the value, invest into building more value, and you will see people will respond. In other words, I'm not just raising my prices because I want to raise my price and people should be paying because it's worth more. No, that would be a response to we continue to increase the value that we offer. So we will raise our prices because it's aligned with the value we are driving. We're increasing that. And the people that are going to come in, they're going to invest more because we are investing more. But you got to go first. You go first, they will follow. It's leadership. Leader says, I'm going to go first and I'm a leader worth following. So you will come and you'll invest in this organization, this operation, whether it's buying a suit, buying a steak, buying a hotel room, or buying a care plan. You decide, right? You have to be the one that leads, and the customer, the people, they'll follow.
I think that's the takeaway right there, Dr. Pete. I love that summary of you have to go first, right? And that's scary, isn't it? It's like you have got to go first, right? So you've got to be the one that invests ahead of the vision, right? So you got to, and that's a scary thing, man. And that's what it is, right? And bravery is action in the face of fear, right? So it's taking action anyway. It's cool to be afraid. That's cool. That's just called being normal, right? So just don't think that it's not scary. It is scary, okay? But there's a select group of people that take action despite the fear, right? And there's a plan to follow. It's not like go recklessly running forward, throwing money around, right? So there's a plan to follow. We're just talking literally about the attitude to give you the permission to say, man, I've got to go first. You know, if you look at Mastro's or you look at Saks Fifth Avenue, you look at Ritz-Carlton or the W Hotel, right? So you do anything, anytime, right? So it's like the W Hotel says it right at the welcome, right at the welcome desk, anything, anytime, right? So Saks Fifth Avenue had a policy where whatever it takes, that was their, whatever it takes comes from Ritz-Carlton, right? So whatever it takes, that's Ritz-Carlton. Or Saks Fifth Avenue, where they had a budget, like everybody on the payroll had a budget of like $2,000 to make a customer happy. It was incredible. Like you're hearing these things and it's like, we look at these businesses and it's like, oh, aren't they special? It's like, yes and no, right? They're special because they do special things, right? So like, don't you want to be special, right? Like, don't you want to be remarkable? To be remarkable, you've got to do remarkable. Like so many people want to be remarkable. It's so few people are willing to do remarkable. This is an example of how to do remarkable, right? So, and you might be saying to yourself, my gosh, that sounds expensive. Yeah, it's going to run you. It's going to run you. So we're recognizing that straight out of the gate, right? But at the end of the day, you're going to pay for that, right? You're going to pay for it either on the front end or you're going to pay for it on the back end, right? You're going to pay for it on the front end and you're going to create and invest and manifest the vision story of the practice that you've always wanted, or you're going to pay for it on the back end playing problem whack-a-mole and opportunity lost that at the end of the day, I feel is far more expensive, not just in your outcome, but your experience. If you're If you have the opportunity and the possibility and the potential right now with your existing business to be $1 million practice, and you are at $600,000, with all due respect, you have a $400,000 problem. Okay. If you have right now, your practice, if it could be a $2 million business and you're only doing $1 million, you have $1 million problem. Okay. So when you hear us say opportunity lost, trust me, you're going to pay for that. Right. So it's costing you $1 million a year to not be a $2 million practice. Dr. Pete, I'm energized by this, because what I want to do is I want to climb through everybody's earbuds right now and just grab them by the shirt, give them a hug, a high five, or a headlock, whatever it takes to give them the confidence and the wherewithal to step forward into that unknown, that scary place, and invest to create that value.
Please stick around for more business insights from this week's bonus interview with our remarkable success partner, dedicated to helping you more successfully help more people. Enjoy. All right, remarkable CEOs. So today I'm honored to have as my special guest in the studio a new friend of mine, a colleague, someone who is a remarkable person, a doctor, a CEO, making a huge difference in her community, in their community, and in our practice, chiropractic industry and space. The co-owner of the Mind Tweak, Dr. Tatum Johnston. Doc, thank you for joining me as in this expert interview and segment. I know this is going to add huge value to our docs and owners and CEOs and anyone who's listening and tuning in to this today. So thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Well, as if you're a listener and you don't know this, Dr. Johnston and the Mind Tweak is a remarkable success partner. As you know, we align ourselves with businesses that serve chiropractic practices and businesses that ultimately helps the doctor and the practice reach more people, do it in a more effective way, and leverage the resources, the talent, the skills, the products, the services of specific organizations. And that's why we have partnered up with the Mind Tweak, because we share our values and we are co-missioning together. And so, Doc, I'd love for you just to maybe help the audience know a little bit about who you are, maybe a little bit about your family, a little bit of your story, and then even the story of the Mind Tweak. Bring us a little bit of up to speed, a little bit of the story, and so we kind of know what you guys do and what you're up to.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been a chiropractor for 12 years now. My husband and I started our practice in Georgia 12 years ago. And we have two boys, 11 and 9, who are very involved in sports. So we're busy with that as well. But coming out of chiropractic school, I spent hours and hours trying to come up with educational materials to give to our patients, to educate them about chiropractic and be a strong referral-based practice in our community. And I just had an opportunity to get involved with this company a few years ago, and we bought into it last year. And it's just been a game changer as far as just saving us time, energy, effort to focus on what we need to focus on and not trying to come up with information like this to give to our patients.
I love it. You brought up a few really important things in my mind. The first is, number one, you've been in the game for a while. You've been practicing chiropractic for a while. And, I think when you've been in the game for a while, I'm not saying you run out of the, kind of the fire that you come out of the gates with. But again, you look at sustainability as a component to running a successful business. It has to be sustainable. We talk about durability and scalability and transferability, but there's also sustainability. And when you're someone who has a conviction around a couple of things you brought up, number one was educating your patients and taking that job really seriously. And then number two, actually driving referrals. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, those are two anchor kind of things you brought up that are, I think, really important to, I know myself, Dr. Franson, I know many of the docs that are tuned into this regularly. So talk a little bit about the educational kind of conviction and component, and then also the referral element as well, because I think both of those things are really important.
Yeah. So As far as the education goes, as we know, when patients come in, there's only so much information they're able to really take in that amount of time. So we want to be able to give them materials that they can take home. We've also had patients who come in who maybe their spouse is not on board with chiropractic for whatever reason. And so they may not be able to go home and explain everything that we've told them when they came into our office, but we can give them some pamphlets or brochures and they can take those home and hopefully start that conversation about chiropractic within their own family. So that's just huge for us. As you know, doctors in our community, we want to be that office that people can trust and they know what we're talking about, right? So they know we know what we're talking about, I guess I should say. So, and then as far as referrals and also patient retention is with that as well. We know that if we provide information and we have engaging patient education material, that gives the patient a sense of trust. And so we know that the more educated or informed the patients are, they're going to continue care with you and also refer friends, family, colleagues, whoever they love and care about to your office, because you've not only helped them, but now you've formed that relationship of trust with them.
I mean, you just hit on some, again, just really big things that as a business owner, as a CEO listening and tuning in, you think, okay, number one, when you're an owner operator, in a sense, like if you was just solo you could just say, all right, I'm just going to control this. Like I'm going to take control. I'm a perfectionist and I like to have control over everything. Then you would just do it all. But you're actually saying, no, you need to function like a CEO. You need to use leverage, right? So even
Right.
for example, if you had an associate doctor or a staff that you expected to educate, like when I hear the word education, it's like, you're not just talking about me as the chiropractor. I'm talking about like all of my team. And and you actually brought up my patients, actually educating them so they can talk tick. They can say the right things. If they're at a ball game with your boys sitting in the stands watching their kids and they're talking to somebody about chiropractic and you overhear it, you're like, that sounds awfully like something we would say. And it's a patient, and you realize the patient that's sitting there talking to some stranger that you don't know about chiropractic is saying exactly what you would say as a chiropractor. That to me is so powerful, that you're equipping people to not only understand it for themselves, which would be a massive achievement, but that they could also be ones that educate and teach other people because they are informed. I think that's awesome. So I think you're leading to like my next kind of question, which is the problem you solve, right? Every business is solving problems. So you're a business that solves this problem for chiropractic. You actually solved the problem for yourself. You scratched your own itch, right? So to speak. You were just looking for something for yourself. And next thing you know, you own a business that does this, right? But so talk a little bit about that, like, your story, the struggle you went through trying to educate your patients, kind of fumbling through the limited resources that were available, to now the conviction that you have in building and growing this business to help doctors. Talk a little bit about the problems that you recognize that we're solving for chiropractors right now.
Yeah. So being a busy practice, number one, there may have been weeks where we had 2 health talks and then we had a dinner. We have a monthly dinner in our practice, but we were going to different types of businesses, whether it be a pediatric office or an insurance agency or an orthodontist office. So taking the stress away from your team and yourself to try to get those materials together to have available for those different groups that you're talking to, right? So if I'm going to a pediatric office, I'm taking pamphlets on ADHD, ear infections, kids in chiropractic, because I'm trying to meet that audience where they're at, right? So yes, chiropractic philosophy is great and we all want to share it with everybody, but you got to meet them where they're at first, get them to your office, and then you can really educate further on the tick of chiropractic, right? So having those education materials readily available is huge. So your team can literally gather that stuff together for you, and you're ready and you're efficient and you're professional, and you can go to those different types of businesses, whether it be, from kids to insurance agencies, and you have those materials ready for you. So saving time obviously is huge with that as well. So I think those are a few things that you can expect with our materials that we can help with.
Can you talk a little bit about, like, you and I spoke about this actually before, which was making sure that the material was up to date. It had the right look and feel, like from a branding
Yeah.
perspective. Can you talk a bit about that? Because you and I both know, like, there was, like, quote unquote, the old school stuff that was out there as far as like educational materials. And you were like dissatisfied with that, as I think many people were. You're like, this just doesn't represent our brand or who we are. Can you talk about that? Because it's not just about saving the time and educating people, but it's doing it in a way that looks good, feels good, is aligned with who you are. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So it's a more modern design. When we got out of school, like you just said, everything just looked so outdated and just didn't vibe with us personally as far as the aesthetic that we wanted to give to people. So it is a more modern look. We started our practice right when that farmhouse modern look came into trend, before it was the khaki walls, the mahogany, like, and cherry furniture, and when we started our practice, that was starting to shift. And so we were looking for something that would just look better, honestly. And so when we saw this, it had that more modern look, that the cooler tones that people are going with now. And I feel like it gives you that modern chiropractor look, which is not to say that the old is bad by any means, but it's starting to be more trendy, I guess, with those colors and things like that. So that's what we were going with.
Well, I think it speaks to your previous point, which you were making a point about something different, but you said meet the audience where they're at first. I love that. We like to say in our marketing, speak to the person's listening. In other words, what are they listening for? Speak into their listening. And you're very mindful and very careful about that. I very much appreciate that about you. So that then they can take the next step, right? You're not trying to, it's not drinking through a fire hose. It's like, hey, I care about, let's use ADHD as an example. I am a parent. I'm a concerned parent because, and then they read your information and they're like, dang, actually that speaks directly to an issue I'm having with one of my children. And then that would then compel them to say, I never thought about this. And then they might give you a call or take the next step or ask, do some more
Yes.
inquiring and going on. And next thing you know, they're booking in and they're bringing their child. So I love that, but it's also like so meeting the audience where they're at is also the appearance, the branding, how you actually present your brand. I know for me, Pete, I'm attracted to certain brands and looks because
Right.
and other ones I would sort of walk right past it because it just doesn't speak to me. So I think you're also speaking to the audience that you're wanting to reach, which is, if you're talking about children and families, well, who are the people that are raising children and families right now? It's people in their 20s and 30s and maybe early
Right.
40s. Like, that's who
Right.
your audience is. So knowing that, speaking into them. And then the other thing that came to me was and I've always been somebody who produced a lot of content. And so as soon as I met you, I was like, oh my God, I think this would really help someone like me who's always trying to be like, my staff would be like, hey, Dr. Pete, can you put together something for this event or this place we're going to go speak at? Next thing you know, I'm building another newsletter, putting together another pamphlet, doing another thing. And you do that. So, I wanted to, just emphasize that point to anybody who's listening, to say, you guys are making it easy. You talked about saving time. Like, to me, that would be a major time saver. That'd be a huge lift off of me, a content producer and voice, to say, wow, I can lean into this. Can you talk about how doctors are leveraging that specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny. Creativity takes time. And if you've never been in that arena, trust me, it takes time. And I mean, hours and hours that you're saving to be able to do this. And what's really cool to me is, when I first graduated, we didn't have any of this. So I think about the new graduate. I think about the chiropractor who's ready to go take on the world. This is just available for you to go ahead day one and start implementing in your community, whether it's using our testimonials that are real life testimonials for different conditions. I didn't have any of that. I had to wait till people started coming into my door and getting better to have these to give out. So it's ready. It's basically turnkey. You've got the materials ready. You can throw the posters on the wall. They look great. They're educating people as they're coming into your office. And it's just the whole entire package that just makes you stand out in your community for patients.
So, you brought up a few things I think are just so good. So talk a little bit about like the suite that you have of products and things you offer for folks. I mean, you don't have to go through everything, but like, just give us an idea. You've already done that, but maybe just as a listeners, they're like, oh wait, what do you have? Talk to us through, like, what are some of the things you guys have?
So we have posters. We have educational posters. Obviously, we also have testimonial posters. We have principled posters. So if you're into philosophy and things like that, we have those that you can put on the wall. We have brochures that cover, I think, over 40 different categories that we have now. So that's really handy to have for different conditions. We also have handouts. We have testimonial handouts. We have research handouts. So handouts that for, let's say, fibromyalgia, that talks about the condition, but they're also based on research as well. So you can see all the references cited there. I know we've all had that analytical patient that wants to see that research, obviously, right? Yeah. So we have waiting room DVDs that you can play in your waiting room that talk about the phases of care, whether it be supportive or if you're in maintenance. So we have a lot of different materials to choose from to cater to your practice needs.
Awesome. Doc, I love speaking with you because you speak, something that I'm incredibly passionate about, which is about education and empowering people and using leverage and doing it in a way so we can do it in a scalable fashion. And I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing to keep everything relevant and speak into the people's listening and just doing it in a really professional way. So I greatly value and just super pumped to have you guys as a success partner and a part of our organization. So I know there's probably docs who are listening that would love to learn more and get in contact with you, even take a next step. As a listener, how would you direct them?
I would direct them to our website. That's where all of our products are listed. It's www.themindtweak.com. If there's any specific questions, you can always reach me at Dr. Tatum at themindtweak.com. So feel free to reach out. Please keep in mind, I run a practice and I'm a mom. So if I don't get back to you, I will get back to you, as soon as I can, if it's not right then. But yeah, any questions, we'd love to help in any way. Please reach out to us.
Awesome. Dr. Tatum, thank you for being my guest. Thank you for being someone who is helping chiropractors help more people. We greatly appreciate you and your work and the value you bring. You're an incredible person. I'm looking forward to continuing to get to know you and work with you as we keep moving forward and helping more chiropractors help more people. So thank you for joining me today.
Yes. Thank you for having me, Dr. Pete. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. All right. So y'all know what to do. Reach out to Dr. Tatum, check out themindtweak.com, and remember to tune in next week for the next episode of the Remarkable CEO podcast. Until then, God bless you all and have an incredible rest of your week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic. And what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.